Summary kuda bagunde, introduction kuda bagunde. So thank you, brothers and sisters. Thank you for coming back and joining for today's session. So ఒక చిన్న recap మనం చూసుకుంటే కనుక last chapter లో, so first of all we have to understand that chapter 19 and chapter 20 are almost all traveling on the same timeline. So when we read Bible and if we are reading through chapter 19 and getting into chapter 20, we might think that after chapter 19 is chapter 20, like the instances that happen in chapter 19 and chapter 20, or chapter 20 is following the instances of chapter 19. But towards the end of chapter 19, where it talks about the daughters of Lot going with their father and bearing children, and Abraham moving from one place to other. Right. So just getting back into the context of it, if we see last week, we have seen the devastation that happened because of the fire that was caused by God in Sodom and Gomorrah. And we have also seen the places are very close by. We have seen this is the scale of devastation. We have seen the houses melting because of the heat. And we have also seen the temperature has reached to 2000 degrees that night, that morning, in fact. And in 2000 degrees, nothing can be left out, right? So we have seen bricks, melting down, the houses melting down, people shattered because of that heat. We have seen fragments of bones and all this that happened, that in the instance of the fire coming from sky. At the same time, if we see the map that we referred in the previous chapters, sorry, yeah, so we have seen Abraham was living in Hebron and Sodom and Gomorrah were the other side of Dead Sea. And we have seen by end of chapter 19 that early morning Abraham woke up and saw towards uh, the Sodom and Gomorrah, and he saw flames coming out of that place, smoke coming out of that place, right? So in verse 28, and he looked down towards Sodom and Gomorrah and towards all the land of the valley, and he looked, and behold, the smoke of the land went up like the smoke of a furnace. Now, I have a question for all of us who joined this study. If you are in the place of Abraham and you see that you have prayed to God the before day, and you have pleaded him for at least 10 people, and God has promised you that, Abraham, if I even find 10 people in this land, I will not harm this city. Right? That's the promise that God has given to Abraham, and Abraham very much knows that once a word comes out of God, it cannot go back. Right? That is the confidence or the faith that Abraham had in God. Now, if you are in the place of Abraham and next day morning you wake up and you see this huge smoke coming out of Sodom, right? What would be in your mind? Do you still believe that there were 10 righteous people in Sodom,
No, we don't think so.
No. Yeah.
right? So the first feeling Abraham must have had, oh my God, what happened, right? At least 10 people. And we also saw that 10 people was not a random number, but it was the number of Lot's family members who were living in Sodom. And that 10 is nothing but the number of members in Lot's family. And when Abraham has seen the devastation that happened in Sodom, the first thought that must have come into Abraham's mind is Lot's family is no more. Now, second thing, even to this day, when you visit this place, you will see ash everywhere, right? And such a devastation and sulfur everywhere. And the smell of sulfur is very pungent. If anybody, yes, please. Anu? Okay.
అన్న అన్న నీ వాయిస్ కొంచెం ఇదవుతుంది, ఒకసారి చెక్ చేయరా అని. కట్ అవుతుంది మొత్తం వాయిస్. నాకే అవుతుందా మీకు కూడా అవుతుందా అని
మాకు
voice-
నార్మలే ఉంది. మాకు ఓకే ఉంది అనుష.
వాయిస్
ఓకే
ఓకే ఓకే అండి.
Anu
మళ్ళీ
network ఏమైనా
రీకనెక్ట్
ప్రాబ్లం ఉండొచ్చు.
బానే ఉందండి, అందుకని.
ఓకే.
ఓకే, నేను
Okay. So the smell of sulfur is very pungent, right? It hurts your nose. You cannot smell sulfur for a very long time. And this instance, where Abraham was living just above the mountain where this happened, we can understand the environment that must have gone around, right? The smell, people dead overnight, right? And it was a whole, I mean, 3 cities that were wiped out except for Zoar. And as sister has mentioned, the name itself is Zoar because Zoar means a small village, right? And Lot ran to Zoar. But at the same time, the whole place was filled with this sulfur smell. The whole place was death to everybody. It was hot, and it says that even the Dead Sea became Dead Sea after this instance, right? We call it as Dead Sea because nothing can grow, nothing can live in that place, in that water, right? And people, even to this day, when they go there, they float on water because the salt is so high. The water evaporated from that Dead Sea that it became so heavy. People do not, dip into the water. They float on that water. However, now because of all this, in the previous chapters, chapter 12, when we saw Abraham, because of famine, he moved from Canaan to Egypt. And there also we saw similar instance happening where Pharaoh took Sarah because Pharaoh thought Sarah is Abraham's sister. Now, this chapter, what is happening is this is where Abraham has traveled. So he is living in Hebron and he is moving towards Gerar. Now, what is Gerar? This is the way all this, the land beneath this Beersheba is all desert. It's deadly desert. And this desert follows again unto Jordan and from there into Saudi Arabia and also Egypt, Sinai, desert. It's nothing but depth of desert. Nothing grows there. So he's walking towards Sinai, and chapter 12 also he walked the same road. He went into Egypt and came back to Hebron. And from now he's moving away from this place and he came to Gerar. Gerar is somewhere here near to Gaza. Gaza Strip, we all know that even today it exists. So this, if at all, this is Gaza Strip. This is where is Gerar, right? Where we see people here. And so this is Gaza, this is Gerar, and Beersheba is where he settled later on and he lived forever in Beersheba. So, however, he is moving away from Hebron, and what is happening in chapter 20, though it is a small chapter, but still there's a lot of things to learn from this chapter. Now, Abraham journeyed from there towards Negev. Negev is the land, the desert, right? And settled between Kadesh and Shur. Shur is a place which is in Egypt. Kadesh Barnea is a place which is in Israel, in the land of Philistines. So he settled between Kadesh and Shur. Then he lived temporarily in Gerar. Gerar, as we see in the picture, it is near to this border, right? It's somewhere here in Philistine territory. So this whole land is populated by Philistines in those times. Now, if we see Genesis chapter 7, verse 11. However, so he lived temporarily in Gerar. Abraham said again of Sarah, his wife, she is my sister. Now, because he has gone to a place of Philistines, and we have seen in the previous chapters also, he feared that people are not godly, and that's why he had to lie. So Abimelech, king of Gerar. Abimelech is again a title like Pharaoh. As in Egypt, the king is called as Pharaoh. In Philistine land, the king is called by the name Abimelech. And we will see in coming chapters, chapter 26, if at all somebody can read chapter 26, we'll see the current Abimelech's son or grandson having a fight with Isaac. Chapter 26, verse 1.
There was a famine in the land, besides the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went to Abimelech, king of the Philistines in Gerar.
Yeah. So the name as king of Philistines Abimelech or king of Gerar Abimelech will also come in the further chapters. But however, Abimelech is a title given to the king in Philistine territory, right? And took so Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah into his harem. Harem is nothing but his palace or his household. But God came to Abimelech, and rightly Prabhakar brother has pointed it out, saying that for the sake of Abraham, God has so far been speaking only to Abraham, but this is the first time we'll see God speaking to a Philistine king about, what is going to happen. But God came to Abimelech in a dream during the night and said, behold, you are a dead man. Now, just to remember, in previous chapter, not 19 but 18, God has promised Sarah that by the next time or the next year, same time, you will have a child. So all this is happening within a year's time, right? He came, he had the lunch with Abraham. He promised Sarah that by next year, this time you will have a child, you will have a child. And from there, he moved towards Sodom Gomorrah. Next day morning, Abraham saw what has happened there, and he started moving from there towards the Philistine land. Now, once he came to Philistine land, this is what is happening. But God came to Abimelech in a dream during the night and said, behold, you are a dead man because of the woman whom you have taken as your wife, or thinking of taking her as your wife. Now, second thing that I'll highlight here, which is a wonder of God. Sarah is actually 90 years old in this chapter, right? Abraham is 100 years old, Sarah is 90 years old. Now, how do you think a king taking a 90 years old woman to be his wife? Is it possible? Is it even possible? Right? Will ever king take 90 years woman? No, sorry.
అంటే అప్పుడు 90 years అంటే డిఫరెన్షియేషన్ ఆఫ్ ఏజ్ ఉంటుండే కదన్న అప్పుడు.
Sarah herself loved saying that I am of age, I cannot bear any children, and God is saying that I'll have a son. And she loved and said, at this time, I have children.
ఓకే. మేబీ అప్పుడు ఈ ఏజ్ క్యాలిక్యులేషన్ చేస్తే అప్పుడు ఒక 50 ఆ ఏజ్ వేసుకోవచ్చు కదా. ఇప్పుడు 50కి ఎలా ఫీల్ అవుతున్నామో అప్పుడు 90కి అలా ఉండేదేమో.
So let's take 50. Let's take that logic into mind. Will a king take 50 years old woman as his wife?
కింగ్ కదన్నా ఏమన్నా.
But will a king take a lady or woman who is 50 years old just for the sake of taking?
మేబీ అదొక
మైట్ బి తను చాలా అంత బ్యూటిఫుల్ ఉందేమో బ్రో. అంత
ఉండేది కదా.
ఉంది కాబట్టి
90.
యా
90 లో
Last
కూడా
chapter we saw she was somewhere in her mid age. Pharaoh took her into harem. Understandable. Here she is 90. She herself told to herself that I have completed all my womanly, natural things. Now, how will I bear? And we all know scientifically what does she mean by that, right? She doesn't have three dharmamlo ledama. So she has passed that age. And now king of Philistine is taking her into his harem, saying that I'll take her as wife. So as per the Jewish scholars or Jewish teachings, what they say is chapter 18, when God and angels had their lunch at Abraham's place, and when God renewed his promise to Sarah, saying that Sarah, by next year, same time you will have a child, automatically, by the grace of God, Abraham's and Sarah's age renewed, right? And Sarah has regained the beauty that she had in the past. Abraham also regained the strength that he had in the past. Yes, Shani. Shani, कुछ question था?
ले बहुत continue.
Okay. So for everybody's understanding, Shani is Simon's wife and Shanti's sister-in-law. Shweta is also here. So Shweta is cousin of Shanti. And we also had Ranjit Mayamappendu. So yeah, Bethel Church members, Shanti's family members are joining in. So coming back to the story. Now, as per Jewish scholars, in chapter 18, when God had lunch at Abraham's place, when God has renewed his promise to Abraham, saying that by this time next year, Sarah will bear a child. So automatically, Abraham's and Sarah's age also renewed to their youth, that they may be able to bear a child. Right? And now let's keep that context into this story, where a king of Philistine has seen Sarah, and we have discussed about the beauty of Sarah in our previous chapters. Right? So King Abimelech has seen Sarah, and he took Sarah, a 90 years old woman, but still looking pretty and in her young age, to be his wife. Any questions on this?
No, bro.
Now, Abimelech had not yet come near her. So he said, okay. So God spoke to Abimelech, a Philistine king, saying, behold, you are a dead man because of the woman whom you have taken as your wife, or thinking of taking her as your wife, for she is another man's wife. Now, Abimelech had not yet come near her. So he said, Lord, will you kill a people? Now imagine God is talking to Abimelech, but Abimelech is talking about people. What must be the reason? People in this land have seen what has happened to Sodom and Gomorrah. And the fear of the Lord was prevailing in this land. Imagine anybody seeing that kind of devastation happening in Sodom and Gomorrah. So though Lord is talking only to Abimelech, but Abimelech is talking about the whole people, because now the fear of Lord is on Abimelech and he fears. So in his imagination, it's not only his household, but now the fire is going to come from the sky and hit Gerar. So what Abimelech is saying, Lord, will you kill a people who are righteous and innocent and blameless? Did Abraham not tell me she is my sister? So such is the environment in that place, such is the fear of Lord that has spread across in this land in that day, right? So Abimelech is praying for his people now. He's saying, Lord, will you kill a people who are righteous and innocent and blameless? And we all know people who lived here in those days also, neither they were righteous, neither they were innocent, neither they were blameless, because idol worship was still very much here. Right? That's what we have seen in the previous chapters. So did Abraham not tell me she is my sister, and she herself said he is my brother? So Sarah also said he is my brother. In the integrity of my heart and innocence of my hand, I have done this. Right? Then God said to Abimelech in his dream, Yes, I know you did this in the integrity of your heart, for it was I who kept you back and spared you from sinning against me. Therefore, I did not give you an opportunity to touch her. So now return the man's wife, for he is a prophet. God is declaring Abraham to be a prophet. In the previous chapters, we have seen all the blessings that God provides to his prophets. God speaks to them, God reveals what he is about to do. In chapter 18, when God said to himself, should I hide what am I going to do in Sodom with Abraham? Because I know that Abraham is going to be father of many nations. I know Abraham is going to teach the fear of God to his children. I know that I'm going to bless Abraham in many ways, right? At that time itself, God knows that Abraham is a prophet for him and is a friend of God. Abraham is a friend of God. And God revealed what he was about to do in Sodom to Abraham. Now, here clearly God is speaking to Abimelech and saying that Abraham is a prophet. So now return the man's wife, for he is a prophet, and he will pray for you, and you will live. But if you do not return her, know that you shall die, and you and all who are yours will die. Right? If anybody can read Psalms 105, verse 15, we can see the promise that is given to to say the word about prophets in
Do
Psalm
not
15.
do
Yeah,
not touch my anointed ones. Do my prophets no harm.
right. If you read this whole chapter, you will see all the blessings that is stored for people who fear God and who are close to God. But at the same time, one very much verse which talks only about prophets is once again, Akka, do not.
Touch.
Do not touch my anointed ones. Do my prophets no harm.
Yeah. So that's the protection of God towards his prophets. And so here, God is clearly instructing or commanding Abimelech to return Sarah back to Abraham. So Abimelech got up early in the morning and called all his servants and told them all these things that he has seen in his dream. And then the men were terrified. The men were also terrified, again, keeping in context of what happened in Sodom and Gomorrah. The whole land has seen what has happened there. The devastation was, I mean, people literally melted in a second, right? The fear of God was prevailing in this land, and his servants trembled. They were terrified by the dream that Abimelech had. Then Abimelech called Abraham and said to him, what have you done to us, and how have I offended you, that you have brought on me and my kingdom a great sin? You have done to me what should not be done to anyone. Right? Now, here the word he used is great sin, right? And is clearly referring great sin to be, I mean, he is referring great sin to adultery, right? If at all Abraham or God would have not stopped him, he would have done a sin of adultery with Sarah. Sarah is another man's wife. And the rule in this land that they are living, and that's why Abraham also again and again, lies or tells half truth about Sarah, that she is my sister. And we can also see in the story of David, where if you want to marry someone's wife, the husband has to die, right? And that's one of the reason where Abraham introduces Sarah as his sister everywhere. However, here Abimelech is calling this adultery that he could have committed as a great sin. And in further chapters, we will see the same word or the same phrase, great sin, is also used for something else. And can we read Exodus chapter 32, verse 21?
He said to Aaron, what did this do to you, that you lead them in such a great sin?
That you led them into a such great sin, right? And what did Aaron lead the people into in that chapter? They made a golden calf. And what is golden calf? The idol of Baal. And what is idol of Baal? It's a idolatry, idol worship, right? So the same expression in future chapters we will see is also used for idol worship or idolatry, right? So idol worship is nothing but very much similar to adultery. It's called a spiritual adultery. Now, what Bible also talks about idol worship, because we have come here, because we are talking about this great sin. So at this point of time, adultery, idol worship are great sins, and they are sin. Idol worship is also referred as spiritual adultery. Same Exodus chapter 30, 32, 30 to 31.
So Moses went back to the Lord and said, "Oh, what a great sin these people have committed. They have made themselves gods of gold. But now, please forgive their sin. But if not, then bolt me out of the book you have written."
Hallelujah. So Moses is also talking about idol worship as a great sin. Second Kings chapter 17 verse 21.
For he tore Israel from the house of David, and they made Jeroboam the son of Nebat king. Then Jeroboam drove Israel from following the Lord and made them commit a great sin.
And made them commit a great sin. What did Jeroboam do? He led the people into idol worship. Exodus chapter 34 verse 15 to 16.
Be careful not to make a treaty with those who live in the land. For when they prostitute themselves to their gods and sacrifice
So
to
one
them,
second, sister. If you remember the previous chapters, we spoke about Nimrod and we spoke about Ashutoth, who is his wife, and we have also spoke that idol worship has started from there. We have referred that she was considered goddess of fertility, right? Even after the husband died, she bore a son to him. So she was referred to as goddess of fertility. Here again, the verse is referring to, once again, sister.
be careful not to make a treaty with those who live in the land. For when they prostitute themselves to their gods and sacrifice to them, they will
So,
invite
what are
you.
they sacrificing here? The tradition in this land was they used to prostitute. So, the temple was a place of prostitution in those days, Baal temples. They used to, I mean, for the sake of bearing children, they used to have this uh, husband and wife relation in the temple in front of the idols. And the tradition was to sacrifice children in the fire that was lit in front of these idols, Baal idols. And that's the sacrifice he's talking about. Now imagine, all this happening in those temples. It is nothing but evil. Yes, sister, once again.
Shall I read from
Yes, yes, yes.
15?
Yeah.
Okay. Be careful not to make a treaty with those who live in the land. For when they prostitute themselves to their gods and sacrifice to them, they will invite you and you will eat their sacrifices.
You will eat those sacrifice. And that is why we as Christians are asked not to eat anything that is offered to idols. All this is coming. The root of idol worship has started in Genesis, right? In the time of Nimrod, I will say,
Yes.
right? And from there, this idol worship has continued in this earth. And the root of idol worship is again Nimrod, his wife, and Baal, who is their son, or that's what they say. But that is the reason that any food which is offered to these idols, we as Christians are told not to eat.
Mm.
What happens if we eat, sister?
And when
What is
you
the
choose,
next
yeah,
verse? Yeah.
and when you choose some of their daughters as wives for your sons, and those daughters prostitute themselves to their gods, they will lead your sons to do the same.
They will lead your sons to do the same. And we all know, when this marriages happen between Christians and Hindus, what happens, right? So all these pujas and all those idol worship is nothing but again giving praise and worship to those goddesses and those gods, that is Nimrod, his wife, and Baal, right? And that's what the verse is warning us for. Yes, sister.
I think brother 15, 16 verse.
15, 16,
Yeah,
right? And this is one of the warning that Bible provides to us for two things. One, not to give your children to the idol worshippers, and also not to eat food or anything that is offered to a idol, right? Why? Again, idol worship is considered as great sin, equivalent to a adultery, and God or Jesus Christ clearly mentions that people who get into adultery cannot enter the kingdom of God. There is no saving for them. And Abimelech said to Abraham, "What have you encountered? What made you do this, or seen in us or our customs, that you have done this unjust thing to us? Why did you tell us this lie?" Abraham said, "Because I thought surely there is no fear of God in this place." In the previous chapters, we have seen that as a Christian, you should not fear to anything except for God. The only fear that you should have is towards the one who can harm your body and your soul and can throw them into the fire, everlasting fire, right? And here again Abraham is saying, surely there is no fear of God in this land, and they will kill me because of my wife. This was my thought, and that's why I had to tell this. However however, she actually is my half sister. She is the daughter of my father, but not of my mother. And she became my wife. So even Abraham is not, when he says that Sarah is my sister, it's a half truth. So, I mean, he's justifying himself, saying that at least I'm not telling a lie, but at least at the same time, the rest of the half of truth, any which ways, he is not saying, right? So it's a half truth that Abraham has been sharing with in the Egypt and now in Gerar. When God caused me to wander from my father's house, I said to her, "This kindness and loyalty that you can show to me at every place we stop, say of me that he is my brother." Right? He has asked Sarah to tell everyone that she is her sister and Abraham is her brother. And Sarah has followed, right? And we can read about Sarah in First Peter chapter 3, 1 to 6, where Peter gives Sarah as an example to other women. First Peter chapter 3, verse 1 to 6. Chadunna.
Wives, likewise, be submissive to your own husbands, that even if some do not obey the word, they without a word may be won by your conduct of their wives. When they observe your chaste conduct accompanied by fear, do not let your adornment be merely outward, arranging the hair, wearing a gold, or putting on fine apparel. Rather, let it be a hidden person of the heart with the incorruptible beauty of a Gentile and quiet spirit, which is very precious in the sight of God. For in this manner, in former times, the holy women who trusted in God also adorned themselves, being submissive to their own husbands. As Sarah
In the
obeyed.
past, the holy women also did the same. This is how they lived. And who is that holy woman?
Sarah obeyed Abraham, whose daughters you are if you do good and are not afraid with any terror.
If you do these things, you are also called daughters of Sarah, and she is called as a holy woman, right? So again, why? Because she obeyed whatever Abraham has asked her to do, and she did. Now, what is happening here? Then Abimelech took sheep and oxen. Again, we will see the same thing which happened in Egypt is happening here in the land of Philistines in Gerar. Then Abimelech took sheep, oxen, and male and female slaves and gave them to Abraham and returned Sarah, his wife, to him, as God has commanded Abimelech in his dream. So Abimelech said, behold, my land is before you. Right? If we go back to this image, you will see Beersheba, which is on the border of Philistine. It's almost all in the land of Philistine, right? This is all Philistine's territory. So Beersheba is on the border of Philistine's territory, and we have seen in the previous chapter that Philistines or Palestinians are nothing but people who are from the family of Egypt. So they went and they came back and they settled in this land. So Abimelech took sheep and oxen, male and female slaves, and God gave them to Abraham, returned Sarah his wife to him. So Abimelech said, behold, my land is before you, settle wherever you please. Then to Sarah he said, look, I have given this brother of yours 1,000 shekels. Now, the shekels that he is mentioning here is nothing but weight. ఇప్పుడు మనం బార్లు వేసుకున్నట్లయితే 1 kilo, ½ kilo, పావు కిలో అంటాము. ఆ టైంలో కాయిన్స్ లేకుండే. So this shekel that he is mentioning, which is still used in Israel, when we go, we use shekels, right? Shekels is the currency there. But this has been in that land for so many years. Even before the coins were came into the trade, shekel was a weight of coins. So he's saying, I have given this brother of yours 1,000 shekels weight of silver. It is to compensate you for all that has happened and to vindicate your honor, to replace your honor, to give back to your honor before all who are with you, before all men, you are cleared and compensated. So you are so precious, right? That's why I am giving. Yes, Anusha.
1 shekel is equal to 12 kilograms అన్నట్టు అన్న.
So ఇక్కడ 1,000 shekels అంటే ఎంత? 12,000 kilos.
అంతే.
Right? And ఇక్కడ నాకేం డౌట్ లేదు, ఎందుకంటే అబిమెలెక్ is a king in this land. So he must have paid. So 1,000 kilos of silver.
1,000 kilo shekels అన్నారు కదా. సో దేర్ ఇస్ నో పర్టికులర్ నంబర్, లైక్ ఒక 1,000 అని కాదు. సో హీ గేవ్ లైక్ థౌజండ్స్ ఆఫ్ షెకల్స్ అన్నాడు. సో మెనీ 12,000 kilos అని, అంతేనా?
Praise God. Ante. So it is to compensate you. So he has given so much of wealth to Sarah. Why he is giving that? It's a replication or it's a reference saying that she's such valuable, right? Is to compensate you of whatever happened and to replace your honor before all who are with you, before all men, you are cleared and compensated. So Abraham prayed to God about Abimelech and his family now, and God healed Abimelech and his wife. Now, what happened? What did actually God do to them and his mates? And they again gave birth to children. For the Lord had securely closed the wombs of all women in Abimelech's household because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. Now, God spoke to him. Whatever Abimelech has seen so far, he has seen in his dream. But in real also, God has actually done it. He has actually closed the wombs of all the women who are in the household of Abimelech. And referring back to what we have read in Psalms, do not touch my anointed one, do no harm to my prophets. Right? And yes, the chapter is quite small, only 18 verses. but this is what we can read in this chapter about adultery, about idol worship, which is considered as spiritual adultery, and about the honor that he has given to Abraham and Sarah. And after this instance, they came back and they started living in Beersheba. And this is where Abraham settled. He put his tents, he dug his wells, and Isaac is also born here, and Isaac also lived here. Right. This is the whole geographical location of Beersheba, Hebron, Jerusalem, and the territory of Philistines. Gaza Strip, we can still see to this day. So this is all about chapter 20. Any questions before we get into testimonies and prayer requests? Any questions that we have in this chapter? No questions, no doubts.
No, brother, it's clear.
Praise
No,
God.
bro.
So what happened in chapter 19? ఏది లోతు వాళ్ళ పిల్లలు చేసిన తప్పు వాళ్ళకి పిల్లలు కన్నది అది సైమల్టేనియస్ గా ఈ స్టోరీతో సహా జరుగుచున్నవి అవి. ఎందుకంటే సారా యాజ్ ప్రామిస్డ్ బై గాడ్ హ్యాస్ టు గివ్ బర్త్ టు ఎ చైల్డ్ in a span of 12 months, right? In a span of next 9 months or 12 months. So it has to happen. And that happened in Beersheba. And simultaneously, whatever is happening with Lot is happening in Zoar towards the other side. Why I had to highlight this is as per in some Jewish scriptures or some Jewish scholars preach that Abraham moved from, there is no particular reason why Abraham